time once again to throw some more bagels. Welcome to the Throwing Bagels Podcast. Kevin Mooney here with you alongside Jay Hamo. Hey, Jason.
Hey, Kevin, how you doing?
I'm great. Go Michigan. How are you?
Yes, I'm doing great. I'll be better later if Michigan wins.
All right. Chris Douglas here too. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Kevin, is it a gold blue? Should it be gold blue?
Go Blue.
It is
Yes.
go blue. That is correct.
Hail to the victors.
At the time of our conversation, the Michigan is playing in the national championship game. So I know. So it's going on behind Jason's back. He's got the game paused right now because he doesn't want to miss any of it. So
Exactly.
we'll try to get Jason in and out of this as soon as we can, right? Okay. So joining us now on the Throwing Bagels podcast, another spectacular guest. He's a 12-time Emmy Award-winning multimedia journalist, content creator at Robert Half, and creator and host of the YouTube channel Plants with Kevin, all right, which has thousands of followers and almost 500,000 views. So please welcome, as fellow Oswego alumni from 2006, the one and only Kevin Torres. Hey, Kevin.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be on your show.
Same here. And you're joining us from downtown Denver, Colorado.
Yeah, where it is balmy 26 degrees here in the Rocky Mountain West.
Nice.
It reminds me of Oswego. So there you go.
I would say, yes.
Minus the lake effect snow, right?
Yeah, you guys can have that. That's fine. Yeah.
And you can see Coors Field right outside your window, right? You're right there.
You can, yeah. It's right across the street. I'll tell
crazy.
you what, yeah, during the home opener and during the summer months, it is constantly busy down here. But fortunately, I'm up on the top floor and our walls are concrete, so barely hear a thing.
So as a host of Plants with Kevin, you show people around your urban jungle. And how many plants would you say that you own in your apartment?
That is anyone's guess at this point,
Okay.
guys. I mean, I stopped counting maybe like 2 years ago, but definitely over 130 plants. But keep in mind, most of those, I would say probably 70% are replicas. So cuttings of current plants that I have that I've made into other plants. Yeah, really exciting stuff, huh?
Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, a process called propagation. So basically, like if you have like let's take this ZZ plant. And I know that you guys can't see who are listening in, but you folks know if you've seen a ZZ plant or any kind of plant like a philodendron or so, basically you end up just cutting at a part where there's a node. And so you just put it in water and then you just wait a couple of weeks, month plus, and then it grows roots. And then you pot them up and you make replicas of those same plants. And so I've been doing that for several years now. And I love making them as gifts for friends, families, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's really neat. And it's a really easy way to kind of add into your collection if you're looking to create an urban jungle. Though I highly, highly suggest before you do that, think about it. Because there is not a day that goes by where I don't have at least several hours of plant chores to do.
Oh man. I was going to ask you that. What does your daily plant care routine look like?
It's all over the map, Kev. It starts in the morning and then ends right before I usually go to bed. And so yeah, in between there is work and all that good stuff. But yeah, it's kind of all over the place. It's not so much a race, it's more of a marathon is what it comes down to.
You mentioned about propagation. My sister-in-law Lee has a forest right in her home office down on Staten Island, and she'll talk about plants every now and again. But she brought up a question of tissue culture, which is like another form of propagation. Like, what are the differences between those two?
I'm still looking into tissue culture and trying to understand more of what it is, but my understanding is more of like a cloning type process that is kind of more scientific based, but it is allowing for a lot of rare plants that even 2 years ago would have cost several $1,000s to be super affordable for people to just purchase, like $20, $30, $50. So it's really interesting, and so many people got involved in plants during the pandemic, including myself, and I really ramped up my collection. And plants were selling them for thousands of dollars, these rare plants. And people were spending so much. It was the most amount of money and time that people were putting into houseplants since I believe it was the late 60s, early 70s, when houseplants really got brought into people's homes and kind of became part of their interior design decor. But the amount of money that people were making off of it, plants was insane. And, I was selling plants too, because I was propagating them and selling them up, but definitely not for that amount of money. I love making plants at a cheap price to make them affordable to give to people. But yeah, that was something during the pandemic for sure.
So what advice would you give people, like if they wanted to start, plant care? And because I'm you provide, like you just said, like cost conscious advice, and it sounds like it can get really expensive. So what advice would you give people if they wanted to start up?
I would say, and it's the biggest mistake that people make, and definitely a mistake that I made early on, was I would go into a plant shop or a place that sells plants and, grocery store, etc. And I would just look at a plant and be like, oh, that's really beautiful. And I really want to bring that home. And so I would just purchase it without doing any research. Simply open up your phone, and usually on, the pot inside the store, it has the plant's name. Google search it and also add in there care advice, easy care, to see whether or not your home is actually going to be beneficial for this plant. Because I can't tell you how many people purchase prayer plants, calatheas as they're called. You see them in grocery stores all the time. A week into having them in your home, they're dead because, a lot of folks don't have high humidity. Or that kind of stuff that, folks want, or that the plants want. But, in Oswego, you guys in upstate New York, you guys have so much great humidity, too much humidity during the summer for my liking. But here in Denver, Colorado, we lack humidity, especially during the summer months. So, yeah. And then also, another thing is the number one reason probably why people's houseplants are dying right now during the winter months is because, one, they're not getting enough sunlight, and two, people are probably watering them as frequently as they would during the summer months. You really got to cut back on the watering, because without that sunlight, it is not being able to absorb the sunlight and the energy to dry out that soil in time. So a lot of people, number one cause of houseplant death is root rot, where the water just sits there.
Do plants fall like in and out of vogue, and like do are there more popular ones than other ones? Are there ones that are kind of like the less popular ones and nobody really wants them? And what are like the trends that or are there any trends for like 2024 that plants that kind of get more popular?
A constant trend that has been happening since the pandemic that people really want is these variegated plants. And that's a plant that's not only green, but has splashes of white in it, different colors of yellow and so forth. And so you see all of these Monstera. We're so used to seeing those Monstera deliciosa, so that's typical Monstera that you would have in your home. But people want these ones that are called Monstera albos, Monstera Thai constellations, which have splashes of white in them. And they're very expensive plants, but coming down in price, making them more affordable. But yeah, people really like those colors. I would say one of the easiest and best plant selections that people could go with is a Monstera, because they are so resilient. You forget to water them, they would love it because they like going with a dry period in between. Same thing with most philodendron. Philodendron are super easy to care for plants. And then pothos. And another thing to point out too is that a lot of people will go and purchase their house plants at a store, and they won't look over the plant in time. And what they'll do is they'll just go home and they'll put it next to their other plants. The problem that you run into there is that a lot of these plant shops and like big box retailers like a Home Depot or Lowe's, they provide plants through Costa Farms and other places, which are really great sellers. But at the same time, when you have so many plants mixed in together, you also have pests that come along with them. And what happens is if you put them in with your collection, those pests will rapidly and quickly go over and jump from one plant to another. And so if you, let's say, invested so much money into these plants, all of a sudden you're dealing with all these little mites that are climbing everywhere and all that stuff. So a word of advice: one, look over the plant to make sure there's no webbing or any kind of weird stuff that you see on the plant. And then once you bring it home, isolate it, keep it away from your other plants for at least a week or two, and just keep an eye on it to see whether or not anything else pops up during that time. It'll save you a lot of stress and a lot of money.
we all have questions about plants all of a sudden, right?
From sports to plants.
Something I never thought I'd really have, but
I know,
hey.
seriously. So is there a difference in or a difference between indoor and outdoor plants and how you care for each of those?
Yeah, I living up here in a loft in downtown Denver, I don't have an outside area, so I never bring plants outside. But so many people during the summer months, especially in upstate New York, will take a lot of their plants outside, which is great because you have the humidity, you have the heat. It's wonderful for them. But you have to be cognizant of the different requirements that are coming along with them. Like if you were to bring a plant outside, most plants, unless you're a succulent or a cacti, don't like direct sunlight. And direct sunlight is when the sun is hitting partially directly on them for several hours throughout the day. And so they like bright indirect light, basically just like us humans, right? We like to be, in the sunshine, but we don't want it hitting our skin for several hours throughout the day because it leads to a lot of problems. And same thing with plants. I mean, their foliage is so thin in most instances that it'll just scorch right through them and burn them up. And so you have to be really cognizant of the sunlight when you bring your plants outside. That's a really big thing. And also, once you have them inside too, don't put them directly in your window where the sunlight will actually tap onto them for several hours throughout the day. Make sure that they have a little bit of shade tucked away, but still get that bright light.
So what do you do in the winter, right? In Denver, not known for their heat in the winter months.
No.
What do you do to, do you have do you use lamps or anything like that to keep your plants alive, or what do you do exactly?
I use grow lights. I have a bunch of them too. And it's interesting because grow lights start off mostly as like these, bright purple type of lights. You think of, just kind of these weird looking things that are neon and this and that, but they've made some really aesthetically pleasing ones. And so I have them spread out throughout my loft here in downtown Denver. And so it's situated in different corners because I only have western facing windows. And so right now I'm barely getting any light, natural light coming in throughout the day. And so it's a struggle, but yeah, I have grow lights throughout, and then also a gigantic spotlight grow light. I kid you not, you look into the thing, it'll leave your eyes blurry for a bit. I do not do that anymore. But yeah, but yeah, I got those things blasting from 5 a.m. until, oh gosh, probably like 11 p.m. I think is when I have them set to shut off. So yeah, adding grow lights in during the winter months will be a really, really beneficial thing. And a lot of this was stuff that I picked up on during the pandemic when I was working as a news reporter at the time, because doing so much research, and really, I mean, during lockdown we didn't have a whole lot of stuff to really do, and so I just kind of started increasing my plant knowledge and all that stuff, and I still continue to do that to this day.
You mentioned western facing windows, so which what would be the preferred direction for south?
South, my friend. Yeah, south, because you have that, bright indirect sunlight, and can be direct unless you, make sure that it's shaded. But yeah, south facing because you have several hours throughout the day. East is great if you want to put a plant in direct sunlight in the morning because it only gets a few hours of that, dimly lit bright sunlight, so it won't really cause harsh. And then western is good during the summer and spring months, and northern facing windows, that you're just in trouble at that point,
Have you always been into plants?
Not as much as I have been over the last couple of years, but growing up as a kid in Rome, New York, not too far from Utica, I would work for my Uncle Frank in high school and throughout college at Oswego, and he owns a gosh, why am I blanking on the name right now? A landscaping business. There we go. Landscaping business. And so I would do work with him, and he would do so much work on flowers and just different designs and so forth for so many clients throughout the greater Rome area. And so I got to learn a lot from him. I was actually back home, I think 3 weeks ago. Yeah, the week before Christmas, and got to help him with his plants, which was really cool to kind of turn that around and, help the person I learned from, really.
I was gonna say, if you had been into plants for a long, why didn't you major in something like botany, go to a school that had instead of journalism?
ESF a shout out here is what you're doing. I don't know if I'd really want to have gone into into it, even now when I look back on it, because it's such a hobby of mine that I wouldn't want a hobby to become a profession, because I feel like I wouldn't enjoy it nearly as much. And also, I think some of the, not that I think, I know some of the most educated and just the smartest people who've taught me the most about plants are people who don't have degrees in horticulture or botany. They're just people who learn through experience. Actually, yeah, most of the people who I've learned from don't come with a background related to plants.
Did you learn from anyone like through podcast or any other YouTube channel hosts?
Oh yeah, I watch YouTube channel hosts all the time. Plant channels like Summer Rain Oaks, and she's a really probably the most famous plant YouTuber. And she during the pandemic did this thing of like one plant a day, and so she'd have like during lockdown, one plant profile a day, and would teach you all about it, bring you to different areas where experts can weigh in and share some really good advice. I would say some of the really good ones are this guy Benji Plants. He does really great stuff and works a lot with interior design as well. There's this guy out in Sydney. His YouTube channel is Sydney Plant Guy. Super educational guy who teaches you so much about plants and how to care for them. Granted, Sydney, Australia has different growing conditions than any place else, but the same rules apply. You just have to kind of mimic exactly what the plant would have in its natural habitat. So there's so many really great plant YouTubers out there that have really helped educate me on my journey. And I highly suggest YouTube as an educational outlet for people who are interested in getting into plants. It's just as simple as putting in the plant name and care tips, and a bunch of videos pop up here and there. Yeah.
In the summer, I usually do like a vegetable garden outside.
Yeah.
Do the same principles apply to your vegetable garden as they do like just regular plants?
I wish I could answer that question for you, but I'm really bad with like vegetables and herbs. I've never really, dove into those things, but I know that they like a lot of bright light. I don't know how fast they grow and stuff, but I had this banana plant during in 2020 or 2021, and the thing is literally a plant that grows bananas, like a banana tree. But it turns out banana plant is actually the world's largest herb. The thing got over like 7 feet tall in my apartment. I just couldn't with it at that point. But yeah, I wish I could answer that question for you.
For your channel, Kevin, Plants with Kevin, what was your strategy for developing your channel?
Well, I spent 17 years in TV news. And so after leaving TV news almost 2 years ago now, I really wanted to still keep my social channels, like my Facebook, my Instagram, that I had connected to viewers. And I had such a strong relationship with viewers, especially here in Denver, having spent 13 of those 17 years here covering news. And I have one of the largest, to this day, I think it's still one of the largest social channels for any TV journalist in the state. I guess now former TV journalist at that point. But yeah, I had a reach of something like several million people. And so putting out one post would get a lot of clicks. And so, I wanted to be able to take the knowledge that I had been learning about plants and transfer that over to the viewers who I had a connection with over those 13 years, and still be able to show them into my world, especially even more, I guess, of an intimate way now, having them into my apartment and giving them tours around, showing them how to do different plant stuff. And so it was a way to keep connected to the people who I have been connected with for over a decade.
How big is your apartment? Like how, and how much, where do you keep your plants? Like, do you keep them like on the dining room table,
it's carefully curated. I'm very big into interior design. My apartment's about 900 square feet, a little over 900. And then, but the trick is that I have 22-foot high ceilings, and I'm 5'6". So if you have high ceilings, and even if you don't, one of my suggestions is to always take advantage of vertical space if you're looking to add in more plants. So I'll have them along the walls, this and that. I try to keep like my table clear and stuff like that, but yeah, they're everywhere. In fact, if you head to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/plantswithkevin, one of the more recent videos, I think my second to last recent video, was my updated home tour, because I like to switch up the style every season for how I'm going to showcase my plants. And I recently did one of those videos. I believe it's got, yeah, it had been within 24 hours, it had over like 1,100 views, I believe, or something like that. So those home tour ones are always really popular. People really like those, just kind of seeing how people style their homes with plants. Because I've seen so many of those designs where people just have grow tents everywhere and this and that, and it just kind of looks like a mess. In fact, if I didn't have my Zoom background blurred right now, it would look like a mess back there because I was moving around plants all this weekend and then just kind of got in the way with everything else in life, you know. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna work on that.
It's funny. You talking about these plants that are growing and stuff like that, and all I keep thinking about is the Geico commercial with the invasive weeds.
Oh yeah,
Going
yeah.
around going around the house.
Oh, there are times when I just have to hack up my plants because they just get too large, and it's, you know, that comes into the propagation process where you can just take those hackings, those cuttings, and just turn them into new plants. So
So you're also a content producer at Robert Half, which is one of the largest finance and accounting firms in the world. What exactly do you do as a content producer for them, and what is that experience like?
oh, it's been an amazing experience. It's been almost 2 years now, and perhaps the best decision. Was the best decision I could have made, transitioning into a different career because it's so interesting to see a world outside of TV news, especially a world that I was so unfamiliar with. And when creating content, it can be, you know, for internal purposes, external purposes. Our our different offices throughout around the globe. Now, I help create content for all of them, mostly here in the US, though, but over 18 other countries. And so it's interesting and really awesome getting to work with those countries, getting to learn how their way of putting about content happens. And it's can be different here, there than here in the US. And so getting to experience that and getting to learn every day is like a new adventure because I always learn something new. Now, like I was saying, I worked in the TV news for 17 years, and you know when the pandemic started and we all had to work from home, and I worked from home for I think 450 something days as a reporter, and during that time, especially during lockdown in the first few months, we weren't allowed to go outside, obviously, to shoot new B-roll. So everybody was using the same file footage over and over for their stories. And I'm sure, you know, the same rang true over in Syracuse at, you know, WSTM, WTVH, and WSYR, where everybody was using the same B-roll over and over. And so I wanted to look for a different way of being able to showcase my stories. So what I did while being home by myself during lockdown was I taught myself how to create all these animations and graphics and maps and all that stuff to really enhance the stories, to show different visuals, and to tell stories in a different way that was still visual, but perhaps in a different way that people weren't as used to at that point. And so that skill set that I picked up and teaching myself that over several months landed me my job at Robert Half. And, you know, now I work from home completely, which I absolutely love because I get to be around my plants, and it's, you know, it's always just kind of neat to be able to be in an environment like this, but also I get to take those skills and apply it to something that I love doing, which is content creation.
What kind of content are you creating? Like, what exactly do they have you doing on a daily basis?
Oh, it varies. It's all over the map, from accolade videos, promotions, and stuff like that. For instance, I mean, we're such a amazing company, and constantly, I kid you not, winning award after award from Fortune, from Forbes, all these different places, time. And so we'll look for different ways to come up with how we're going to go about creating videos regarding these accolades in sort of a public relations marketing type of sense. But also then taking that, if we win a global accolade, which we do all the time, and then applying that into different ways of being able to showcase that in our different countries, whether that's you know, transcribing them into different languages or showing different visuals and stuff. I'm working on a bunch of different stuff right now, including a video for our team in Canada where they have a big seminar coming up. I believe it's later this month. And so getting to highlight kind of their success story throughout over the last year for 2024 is really neat. But yeah, it's kind of just about telling Robert Half's story. and that's really what I love doing is storytelling. And this is a different way of being able to do that. And it's been so rewarding.
You spoke about how different countries consume or expect to see content a certain way, and that it differs from how it's presented in the United States. What are some of those differences that you need to be aware of when you're putting content together?
But one that I recently learned was after having a meeting with our office in Tokyo was how the sentence structure is different in the Japanese language, where it starts off with pretty much like the end of the sentence first, and then you get into the beginning of the second sentence last. And so structuring everything around how we're so used to here in America and in other countries across the globe that way, then having to, kind of find different ways of going about doing that, but just being more cognizant. And then there's just different sentence structure stuff like the French language. If you have an exclamation mark or a question mark at the end of a sentence, there has to be an unbreakable space in between the last word and that exclamation mark or question mark. Stuff that I never in a million years would have thought I would have known, but here I am, and I love it.
I know you mentioned about your career in journalism. Let's go back to where it all began. So you mentioned you grew up in Rome, New York. So what led to your interest while you were growing up? What led to your interest in journalism and to SUNY Oswego?
Yeah, since I was a little kid, I had always wanted to be a TV reporter. I would watch the local news, WKTV and WSYR back home in Rome with my mom all the time. And, Central New York is one of those places where so many people watch the local news. And it's, had always been on in our home growing up as a kid. And so that had been the career path that I had always wanted. And so, everybody was always, going on and on about SU and Syracuse University and their journalism school and this and that. But I also learned early on that at SU, you're not allowed to join, I believe it's called Orange TV, which would be their version of WTOP or Citrus TV, something like that. That you weren't allowed to join that until your junior year of college. And so I didn't want that kind of experience. I wanted hands-on experience where I was able to just dive right in, start doing on-air reports, anchoring, all this sort of stuff early on. And WTOP provided that. And it was the best experience that I could have asked for in a college, hands-on experience that landed me a job as a part-time reporter at the CBS affiliate in Watertown my junior year of college at Oswego. And so rather than having to start doing the campus TV station my junior year at Syracuse University, I was actually reporting for a CBS affiliate my junior year. And so I was driving back and forth between Oswego and Watertown 32 hours a week. I was reporting there on the weekends and then on Fridays and Mondays. And so I was going back and forth my junior year and throughout my senior year. And then 2006 comes along and, was offered the job at WSYR down in Syracuse. And I went there for, I believe it was two and a half or 3 years. And I had a blast getting to cover news back home, especially at the TV station that I grew up watching. And, getting to work with a legend like Rod Wood, who was just one of the most amazing people that ever had the opportunity to work with. And miss him dearly. Great guy, just super funny. But getting to have that experience was excellent. But my station that I wanted to work at when I was at Oswego, and I would watch them online all the time, was KUSA 9 News in Denver and the other affiliates here in Denver. So I was offered a job at KUSA, worked there for 5.5 years, then went over to the Fox affiliate, where I spent 7 years, and I had really wonderful experiences at both stations. And what was awesome was that during the 13 years that I was here, I would say for about 10 of those years, my job was mostly as a feature reporter, where I would travel the entire state of Colorado and do all these little feature stories in these small towns, stories about, a cat being a mayor of a town and ice festivals and stuff like that. Just the most random stuff that never in a million years did, I think I get covered. But I've been to pretty much every town in the state at least once or twice. I don't know how many miles I logged, whether I have more plants than miles. I don't know. It's anybody's guess, you know. But it was a cool experience. I'm very fortunate to have had that career.
As you mentioned, your experience in Colorado, going from town to town, what stories do you think of most often when you think about that part of your career?
I think about the stories in the smallest towns that had probably a small impact on the state as a whole, but had such a huge impact on that community. But being able to showcase and tell those stories in such a unique way would make everybody in the state care. And that's why that segment it carried on for so long, and why they allowed me to continue traveling the state and doing these feature stories. One of my favorites was, I think it was from 2018 or 2019. And it was about this little kid in Northwest Colorado who was struggling with this really awful disease. And I forget the exact name of it. I want to say it's called Duchenne's disease, something along that. And he was bound to a wheelchair, and he was in middle school. And they were playing against their football against their hometown rival, which was Steamboat Springs. And they were, of course, in Craig, Colorado. And so both of the teams came together, and without the kid knowing, he was they called him like their honorary coach, because he would just sit there and he would just be like, come on, guys, come on, get out there and kick some butt and kick their butt and this and that. And they came together, and for the last touchdown of the game, they had him do it. And so you had all these, the competing team at Steamboat, all the players like going after him, but throwing themselves before they could get close to him. And it was just so heartwarming. And then the kid started tearing up at the end, and being able to capture moments like that really is the things that I really enjoyed the most, was being able to take a slice of humanity and show people that there's really a lot of good in the world. I'm a firm believer that, when you watch the news, it's just all, awful stuff, right? But I believe that there's more good news in the world than there is bad news. The reason why we see bad news all the time is because, that's what people want to know, the craziness of what's going on in the world. If you had good news on all the time, I don't know if as many people would watch, which is unfortunate, but it's just the way it is.
You said that you wanted to work at KUSA, like you had thought about that's a place that you wanted to be. Like, what made you choose that's like when you were younger, that was a place that you wanted to be? You wanted to work in Denver, Colorado.
And it wasn't just KUSA. All the stations here had such a huge reputation for being such great storytelling shops. All of these TV stations that have some of the best photographers in the country, the best writers, and they just told news differently, where it was almost like watching like this engaging movie for each story, compared to, and there are some really wonderful storytellers back in central New York, but, it can be kind of generic when you watch the local news. And I find it rather quite boring to watch the news unless it's something where there is storytelling involved. And Denver and Minneapolis were the two markets where storytelling was, that was the big thing, the big draw to go to those cities. So it was either going to be Denver or Minneapolis. Denver was my first choice, and fortunately ended up here. But yeah, every station in Denver, though, is really excellent at storytelling. There's so many really wonderful photographers, editors, producers, reporters, and anchors at each station here in this market. So that's what the draw was.
Did you have any specific professors that stood out to you that helped you along the way at Oswego, and what helped you prepare for a career in journalism?
Ron Hastings, Ron Grafe, Professor Grafe, as we knew him. He was excellent, and he was a reporter. He had worked in TV stations in Syracuse, and he was just so knowledgeable about how to structure a package, as they're called, a news story. Jerry Condra, who served as a general manager, news director at so many stations around the country. They taught me the fundamentals of what I needed to know in order to succeed in the industry. But it was really once I started working in the industry itself, where you pick up the actual stuff that you need to know. It's like professors in colleges can really try to teach you as much as they possibly can. But the fact of the matter, and I think this rings true for every industry, right, is that it's experience that's really going to pull you in and teach you the most. And that was also, one of the big draws about going to Oswego was going to be able to work at WTOP as a student, getting to work at the campus TV station, and getting that hands-on experience, because that in itself really helped get me ready for my first job at WWNY TV in Watertown.
That's why I always used to hate, right, when people like you'd apply for a job after college or during college, and people would be like, "Well, you don't have the experience." But I can't get the experience if you don't give me the job. When it's a literally a incoming, you low bottom of the barrel job, but you don't want to hire me because I don't have the experience, but you don't give me the experience.
And then a lot of these internships, it's not so much about getting to do a whole lot of stuff. It's,
Exactly.
Yeah. So it really, and I did have a lot of internships. Unfortunately, I was able to do quite a bit during those experiences as well, which also helped propel me for my career.
Throughout your various stops, you've talked about photogs and editors and writers and producers. And Kevin, you've done all of that. You've done at the same time. So like you began with Channel 9 with like the backpack journalism approach. And so what led you to prefer to do more or less everything on your own versus, having to delegate some of the work to editors, producers, and so on?
Yeah. So as a backpack journalist, same thing as a multimedia journalist, same job, just different title. What really drew me into it was I really love videography, photography, and being able to see these stories that were done by such excellent markets such as Minneapolis, Denver, Seattle, also at the time, and get to see how they really put their stories together. I knew that, while there were really great photographers in the markets I worked at early on in my career in my early 20s, they weren't putting together stories like that, and trying to teach somebody who had been working in the industry how to do that would, just be a nightmare to begin with, right? And so it's like, I'd rather just be able to do all this stuff myself and really take that skill set and just kind of take it to the next level. And also, I looked at it as kind of like job security also. TV news was an interesting industry back then, and nobody really kind of knew how things were going to shift around and all that stuff. And I felt knowing how to do more would just kind of make me more valuable, and it really did. And being able to be your own videographer, your own editor, your own writer, just kind of allows you and sets you up for success in that instance, where the more the more you're going to be able to do. And I really loved each aspect of it. And it was just fun. I like being able to go by myself. I'm a very introverted person, despite having been a TV reporter for 17 years. And so I like being by myself a lot, and getting to have those experiences where, I can say, I put that story together by myself, and I'm really proud of it.
Now, this is the serious part of the show here. We have very important questions to ask you. During your stay at Oswego, did you enjoy the chicken patty sandwich at the dining hall?
I did enjoy the chicken patty sandwich at the dining hall, but of course, nothing would compare to the Oswego sub shop,
Well, so you got to give us what your chicken patty sandwich looked like, what your ingredients were on it. You got to tell us.
I'm a very basic person.
Very basic. That's it.
Yeah, chicken patty would just have, the chicken patty with either barbecue sauce or ketchup. That's it. Same thing with burgers. I'm the most boring eater in the world. I get complaints about it all the time. So yeah. I mean, the thing I liked at the sub shop was the buffalo chicken sub. That thing was like, that thing was very comforting during college.
I think we could all say that we've spent plenty of time at the sub shop and having plenty of chicken patties in the dining hall for sure.
I mean, look, those chicken patties are delicious. I'm not gonna, but they were amazing. I'd have one right now if it was here. But alas, I'm in Denver, Colorado.
We'll ship it out to you.
It'll arrive frozen, probably.
That's right.
Look, if the sub shop can get a sub down to Al Roker, we can get a chicken patty across over to Denver.
Right, Kevin who? I'm sorry, you want to send this to Kevin who? He's not Al Roker.
Don't you know who I am, damn it?
Yeah.
I have plants.
Well, it's funny, Kevin, at Channel 9. So you and I sat next to each other at the web desk. And really, Channel 9 had one of the best websites in the country at that time. Yeah. In the late aughts. But there were so many Oswego grads in that newsroom It was
You
crazy.
know, which is probably why Channel 9 to this day is still, you know, the number one station in the market, I
Yeah.
believe. And, you know, our news director at the time, he was an Oswego grad.
Mhm.
And, you know, he knew what Oswego would provide to a student and what it would teach them. And he was a smart man to hire, you know, all those people from Oswego. I mean, it really paid off in the end. And I don't know. I do like Syracuse University. I think it's a really cool school and stuff like that. And it has so many amazing talent, obviously, who come there throughout the decades. But I guarantee it'll be tough to find a harder worker than a Oswego grad, you know, who really wants to prove themselves in an industry.
Yeah, we've actually heard that quite a bit from alumni. I think we are kind of, in the industry, the hardest working bunch, without
Yeah,
question.
Mhm.
I would agree 100%. I mean, any person that I knew from Oswego, it doesn't matter what industry they were in, they've all done really well in their careers, whether or not they stayed in that career or left and went somewhere else. But yeah, that hard work aspect that is ingrained into your mind at Oswego is something that kind of
Mhm.
stays with you.
Absolutely. Kev, wanted to wrap up by circling back to your YouTube channel, Plants
Yeah.
with Kevin. So I subscribe to a lot of YouTube channels, and I know every video I watch, they tell you, please like and subscribe, right?
To my
Please,
channel.
please like and subscribe. But how important is that to you as a YouTube channel host that people do that?
So important. And I've only done this channel for, oh gosh, a little over a year now. And or no, maybe it's been closer to two, yeah, a year and a half, I would say. A year and a half closer, getting closer to 2 years now. But yeah, like you were saying, during that time, close to 500,000 views or something like that. And it's really important to get those people to engage with your content. In fact, the moment that I see on my phone that you have a new YouTube comment from the YouTube Studio app, I immediately open up and respond to it, because the faster you respond, the more it's going to see and pop up in people's feeds, and that you're engaged with your viewers. And so, yeah, liking and subscribing to my channel would be a really great thing, guys. I'd appreciate it. It's youtube.com/plants with Kevin. And then I recently launched a website about 2 months ago, plantswithkevin.com, where I take a lot of that content and expand on it there. Whereas I might not take, you know, as much time to explain the ins and outs of every single plant that I'm focusing in on. But on the website, it allows me to not only feature the video, but also to have more detailed list for care tips and all that stuff. And that's been a fun adventure. That's the next step. And, you know, gosh, it was probably, I want to say 6 to 8 months ago, where YouTube started paying me for my content because it started getting as many views and this and that. And so, you know, the more content that you produce and all this stuff, it just kind of gets enveloped in there together and all that stuff. And so subscribing to a person's channel, liking, commenting always helps out, regardless of whether or not it's a plant channel or anything else. So yeah, follow your favorite YouTubers.
So I was going to ask if your channel is if you've monetized your channel, but you obviously mentioned that. But
Yeah.
how did you get it out there? Like, you know, you started from scratch, right? You had nobody viewing it at the time, right? How did you get the word out that you started this channel?
That's where that, you know, my connection with all those viewers from all that time in TV news really came into play, and sharing it on my professional Facebook page, my Instagram, and all that stuff really helped get those views up. And I think just also, like, a lot of plant YouTubers will just sit there with their camera in front of them with a plant and talk about it for, I don't know, 15-20 minutes. And it's just a standard shot. I go all out with my content. You know, it's like a highly produced type of video. And so the more that I do of that, it makes it set aside and set apart from the other plant YouTubers. And so that's been a real big focus of mine. But that's also, you know, where my skill set in TV news, my skill set at Robert Half, where I'm creating all this content, really comes into play. And delivering really good quality content is so important. Good audio, good video, all that sort of stuff. And that's kind of what I'm focusing on now. And it takes a little bit more time, but it's worth it in the end.
And do you use like a TV type of camera to record your video, or do you use just
Nope.
basically camera on the computer?
Yeah, I use my my iPhone, it shoots in 4K. I also use a GoPro sometimes, which shoots in 4K, and I'll do multi-camera shots, but then I'll do a lot in post-production. I edit on Final Cut Pro, and so I'll add in some different effects and stuff like that to really sharpen the video, the color and all this stuff, adding graphics, animation, all this sort of stuff, just to make sure that it's not boring. I can't tell you, I mean, as much plant YouTube content as I consume, it just gets really boring sometimes. I mean, if it wasn't for the educational aspect of needing to know exactly how to care for that plant, I don't know if I would watch it as much. But yeah, more and more YouTubers though, plant YouTubers are really upping their content creation quality. And that's really nice to see because I think it's just beneficial for everyone involved.
How long does it take for you to put together let's say your latest episode? So it's about 20, 25 minutes, right?
Yeah.
That you have. So how much effort does it take to boil that down into that episode?
That one took I was working on it here and there for a couple of days, a couple hours here and there. And so, filming it's one thing, then editing it together. I'll go into it with an idea of how I want it to look, how I want it stacked. And, you might laugh at the fact of 29 minutes, but what's interesting, and I learned this through research and all this stuff that YouTube provides you, is that, in this TikTok and type of generation that we live in, where people will move from one video to the next in 2 to 3 seconds time is the average time that people will spend on a video. Plant people, when it comes to video, if your video is less than 5 minutes, they're not going to watch it. The views are really low. Yeah, they want, and I should have known this, early on before I started creating plant content. I'm like, when I watch plant videos, I'm not looking for a short video. I'm looking for a 30-minute to 45-minute video where they're going to really go in depth on it. And I'll sit there and I'll watch them. I'll just have them on my TV or on my computer. And yeah, plant people we're an interesting bunch, but we enjoy our content.
Here's another question for you. Not that I know that much about plants, but I've heard, people say this before. Do you talk to the plants?
Sometimes I do. More often than not, no, because they're plants. But at the same time, when you talk to a plant, there is a reason behind wanting to talk to a plant, is that you're releasing exactly what they're looking to absorb, and so they're providing oxygen to us. We're providing the carbon dioxide, all that sort of stuff, and so it's beneficial. But yeah, maybe once a month I'll remember to talk to a plant while I'm cleaning off its leaves or something. But usually I'm listening to music while I'm doing my plant chores.
So you're singing, and then that's just kind of like
That's right.
the carbon dioxide is coming out that way.
I do not have a lovely singing voice, so I am not singing to these plants. I don't want to scare them away. I want them to keep on growing.
But you're by yourself in concrete walls,
Exactly.
so
It's like you're in the shower almost.
Just start blasting that music and that voice,
Plants won't judge you.
Yeah, they're the only
Or
ones.
will they? How do you know?
Yeah, I don't know what they're saying.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me.
And best wishes on the YouTube channel.
Thank you so much. You guys
Good
stay
luck.
warm there in Oswego.
We'll try.
Take care.
Bye, guys.
And that was Kevin Torres, Emmy Award-winning multimedia journalist, content creator at Robert Half, and creator and host of the YouTube channel Plants with Kevin, and a fellow Oswego alumni. So please check out his YouTube channel, youtube.com/Plants with Kevin. We'll link it up on the episode on our website at throwingbagels.com.
Subscribe and like.
Yes, please subscribe and like. It
sounds like we need to start a YouTube channel too, guys.
Oh,
we
no.
can have people subscribing like us.
But we don't show video, so it's kind of
You can do animation.
That would be pretty cool. That would take a lot of work, but that would be pretty cool.
We'll just have 3 bagels and we'll put mouths on them and they'll just talk. We'll be talking bagels.
And then if we're BSing something, the cream cheese will just come out. That's the BS coming out.
So it's January, which means next month is baseball.
Yes.
If you can believe it.
Or is it yes? I don't know. I haven't decided yet.
Yes.
It's okay. We'll see what happens. Normally, I look forward to February. Right now, I'm like, do I really want to look forward to February right now? I don't know.
Yeah. Look, the bar is low, right?
Very
I
low.
guess.
It's very low.
I like I said to you guys, I think I said to you guys yesterday, I almost feel like the Wilpons have bought the team back at this point.
We're back
It's a bad feeling.
shopping in the bargain bin.
Man. So like I get last year was like rough, you know, and you spent money and didn't work out, but you know, and we lost out on Yamamoto, and that's no one's fault. You know, that he's just a shyster who, you know, used the Mets to get money from the Dodgers. But it you know, like they're delaying with Alonso, you know, they're dilly-dallying. No one knows what they're gonna do. I'm really afraid they're gonna actually trade him or let him go. Like,
oh man.
like you can't, I literally have no clue what the Mets are doing. And I'm afraid that Stearns is kind of, it's almost that I'm equating it to the Knicks, to the point in a way of, remember when Phil Jackson was like, had Dolan's ear and was just like telling him all this stuff, and Dolan was like, yeah. You know, I feel like Stearns is like, listen, I can build the Mets in the way I did it in Milwaukee. And Cohen's like, okay. And then I'm thinking, but he won nothing in Milwaukee, so it does no good. It's not like he won a World Series. Yeah. All right. So be competitive and what? Get knocked out in the first round every year?
At least they're making the playoffs. I mean, you can look at it that way too. I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah. I'm not. I mean, yeah, he knows how to build a farm system, right? Which is, I know what Cohen wants, and I'm all for building the farm system. But at the same time, man, come on. You want to build the farm system? You want your homegrown players? Well, I got one for you right here. Pete Alonso. There you go. There's a homegrown player for you.
It's true. Well, I really hope that they lock him up before spring training begins, because once it begins, he's not going to sign.
They're not.
And then
they're not going to do it. I'm telling you, they're not doing it. First of all, Scott Boras is his agent, number one.
Yeah, I know.
You know, once he switched, they had their opportunity, right? Before he switched to Boras. Once he switched to Boras, it was all downhill from there. The guy is like a bloodsucker. It's just like I mean, look, if I was a professional baseball player, I'd want him as my agent too. The guy gets his players the most money. He's great at his job, but as a fan, you know, you're like, oh God, Boras is his agent? Great. This is going to be a disaster, you know?
All right. I think that'll do it for this edition of the Throwing Bagels podcast. Thanks again to Kevin Torres, host of the YouTube channel Plants with Kevin and fellow Oswego alum, for joining us. Also, thanks again to my sister-in-law, Lee, for helping prep us with little plant questions here and there. We appreciate that. You can catch us online anytime, throwingbagels.com. You can email us, throwingbagelspodcast@gmail.com. We got a blog coming up next week. I think that's, what is it, Jason? Is it your turn?
I'm up next.
You're on next. Okay. So that's coming out. And then on the next Throwing Bagels podcast, we will chat with Odyssey COO Susan Larkin. You may have heard that name from our conversation with Dana Murphy, who works at Amperwave, which is an Odyssey company. So Susan Larkin will join us, fellow Oswego alum as well. She'll join us on the next edition of the Throwing Bagels podcast, and we are really looking forward to that.
Yep, looking forward to it.
Yep.
So
we'll let Jason go now so you can watch the rest of the Michigan, whoever they're playing. I don't even know. I don't.
Washington Huskies.
Washington Huskies. Okay,
that's right. And the hopefully next quarterback of the New York Giants, Penix.
All right, we'll see.
It's debatable.
We'll see. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
So long.